Hey everybody, welcome to First Attack. How's everyone going? Oops, hang on, let me lower the volume on my own laptop here. How's everyone going? This is the first time in a while that I'm going back to actually a regular kind of episode where I'm just going to go over some, more basic tactics. And the thing that I actually want to cover today is a very, very simple, very, very fundamental, very basic tactic, and that is defense. And the main reason why I want to cover this is because I've actually gotten a lot of messages from people, like from Ask jchensor segments of people just asking me, hey, can you do an episode on defense? I really want to know how to do reversals, or I really want to know how to defend against rushdown, or I really want to know how to escape vortexes and such. And I haven't had a chance to do that, but I'm going to do that today, so let's get into a little bit about defense. And unfortunately, defense is just one of those skills that comes with experience. You aren't going to learn defense overnight. I'm not going to be able to tell you anything here on today's show that's going to all of a sudden turn you into a defensive juggernaut. Defense is probably one of the hardest things to learn in this game because, with most video games, if you're playing a shooter, if you're playing a platformer, you're going to want to hit buttons, you're going to want to jump, you're going to want to shoot things and stuff. So, attacking with buttons, hitting buttons is a very common tendency. It's just what you do in video games. And the hardest thing about defense is that it's kind of the opposite situation. You don't want to be hitting buttons, especially in a game like Street Fighter. Defense really comes down to learning how to restrain yourself from not exposing yourself into situations where you can get beat up. Obviously, David's going to talk about this on Level 3 Focus a little bit later today, but, one of the things that I can mention was K-Brad versus Infiltration earlier this weekend at Seasons Beatings. If you watch that match, I was watching it with a friend, and all I did was point out that K-Brad did nothing. He walked up and blocked, I think 90% of the time. 90% of the match, he walked up and blocked. And it was so crucial, and it was such a key thing that he was doing, and that's kind of what prevented him from getting killed. And yeah, he wasn't necessarily playing defense, he wasn't turtling. He was actually keeping himself from getting killed. So here's the thing, right? Defense, a lot of people think about defense in this kind of way of, okay, defense is about turtling, defense is about sitting back and kicking back, and defense is about playing, runaway games and such. And that's not really what defense is about. Honestly, defense is mostly about keeping yourself from taking as much damage as possible. And I'm not even going to say defense is about avoiding damage, because as we get into later on, you'll see that that's not necessarily the case. So what it actually turns out is that defense is learning how to minimize the amount of damage that you are going to take. And so I wrote up a couple of very key important factors about defense here. And I think that there's three main things about defense that people have to keep in mind, that if they master these techniques, this will help them a lot when it comes to not taking damage. So one of the main things that I've actually gotten a lot of times from people are I need to improve my reactions. I'm having trouble when people jump at me, I don't uppercut them, I can't block overheads, people cross me up and such like this, and they ask me the question, how do I improve my reactions? And really the reason why they're asking this question is because what they're essentially asking is, how do I improve my defense? Because really that's the core thing that they're trying to get here, is that they're trying to make sure that they stop taking all this damage. So there is this great article that was written by an HDR player named Fellow. I'll put the link out there. I'll put the link out there later on, but it's a really great article where he talked about the concept of anticipation versus reaction and how it plays into defense. He was a Honda player in HDR, so this is a very important concept. And so if you guys have watched a lot of First Attack episodes in the past, one of the things that I like to say to people is that whenever they say, how can I improve my reaction? How can I improve my reaction? What I usually tell them that is that most of the time, it's not reaction. It's actually anticipation. So if you see someone block an overhead, there can be reaction involved. And reaction, if you can block overheads on a reaction, that comes down to muscle memory, and that comes down to familiarity with things. So, for example, in a Tekken game, when we were talking to Rip last week about the game, and we were talking about blocking lows and such, he was specifically referring to Heihachi's move where he spins and hits you with the knuckle on the legs, and that's a low hit. And it's too fast to be human reactable. You're not going to be able just to block it on reaction every time unless you play the game enough, unless you start seeing it a bunch of times, right? Then you might be able to start reacting to it, but even then it's still not pure reaction. It's actually a lot of anticipation, because once you've trained your muscle memory, your brain, once you've kind of like put those synapses, like fire those triggers in your brain, as soon as you see that move happen, you're instantly going to block. And if you weren't thinking about that move at all, you probably will get hit. But there's something in the back of your brain that still has that in mind. And so you're always going to be able to block it when you see it. And so anticipation turns out to probably be the most important part about defense. Let's talk about Marvel, for example. My favorite example is Dante, because Flo blew me up with this like 7,000 times when we used to play vanilla Marvel all the time, where all he would do is, he would get into the position where he was right in front of me, do an instant air dash B and cross me up and hit me from behind, and then he would just open me up and I would get killed by a combo. That was the situation where, that prompted me to ask Flo the magical question of how do I block this, and his reaction was, you really can't block it very well. It's just one of those things that you're just going to get caught by eventually. But the thing about it is, once I started playing him more and more, and the more I started remembering that option was available to him, the more I remembered whenever he got into that distance that he might actually instant air dash behind me and hit me with the cross-up B, the more often I blocked it on, quote, reaction. And again, it's not really much of a reaction. It's just you've trained yourself. You're in the back of your head, you're thinking about this problem, and you're ready to stop it as soon as it happens. So, for example, in Street Fighter 4, let's say you're playing against Seth, right? And you're sitting there fighting him. You're standing kind of like at a moderate distance from him. For example, I was playing against Online Tony one time, and I know Online Tony likes to watch for when you play this careful game in front of him, because that opens up him dashing forward and SPDing you. And so I played the game there on purpose so that he would dash over, and then I hit him before his dash ended, and I punished him there. So it might have looked like to an observer that it was just good reactions or good defense, but to be honest with you, it was probably, I would say, 98% anticipation, 2% reaction. So that's one of the important fundamental concepts of defense, is anticipation. Once you start, and this is hard. This is hard, especially in a game like Tekken, where the opponent has so many different moves, and that's what makes Tekken so hard. That's why a lot of people say it's so hard, because there's so much to learn. You have to learn all these moves, all these lows, and so you have to, you have to gain the ability to anticipate everything that your opposing character can do. The more you play the game, and this is one of those reasons why I always tell people, if you don't have a chance to play a lot of people locally, play online. Okay, the lag might be a little bad or whatnot, but the more matches you play and the more times you get hit by annoying things, like if you play against a guy and he keeps hitting you with the overhead elbow, or if Ryu keeps hitting you with, his collarbone smasher, whatever it's called, and then if Viper keeps doing burn kicks behind your head and keeps hitting you with that, keep that in mind. Like, learn that and learn to build up those triggers so that you can start blocking them. You may not win the matches online, but that's not the point. The point is not to win online. The point is to learn. And by playing a huge amount of matches, you are going to learn how to anticipate better, because then you're used to the situations in which the opponent will pull out those mix-ups. Another really, really, really good way to learn anticipation, and I recommend this to everybody, is to once in a while just try messing with other characters, play other characters. So, for example, if I'm Viper, I keep losing to Viper and I can't fight her. So I'm going to play Viper now, and I'm going to be like, you know what, I want a cross-up burn kick. So you start learning the distances in which the cross-up burn kick becomes most effective. And then when you go back to your main character and you play against Viper, when Viper gets that distance where you would have done an instant air burn kick to cross up, that starts firing those triggers in your head, and the anticipation will allow you to block it, or even if you're, for example, Ryu, you're going to low forward under it and punish it. And so anticipation is a huge factor of defense. There's a lot of different ways to build it. This is one of those areas of defense that you can build up. You can actually build this up by playing a lot of matches, getting a lot of experience, and that's going to be the best way to do it. Or if you don't have the chance to play, when you watch match videos, put yourself in the shoes of one of the characters. Put yourself in the shoes of, for example, if you lose the Viper a lot, go find some Wolfchrome matches, and while you watch the Wolfchrome match, be the other character. Be the opposing character. And anytime Wolfcrone happens to do a cross-up burn kick and you see the guy get hit and you feel that surprise in yourself, that's teaching you something. Now, just by watching the matches, you're building these triggers in your head so that when you actually play a Viper in real life, online or offline, when you get to that distance, you'll remember seeing Wolfcrone do that at that particular distance all the time, or he had that particular setup, and you might actually be ready to block it in time. So, again, anticipation, very, very, very key. Another thing this kind of goes with the anticipation, but the second main factor of defense, I believe, is just plain old knowledge. And this kind of falls under, the Tekken realm, knowing what the opponent character can do. And also the other thing too is that there may be some situations that look like there's nothing you can do about. But once you know the proper escape, then you can react to those situations properly. I'll show you guys an example in just a second. Sorry I haven't used any game examples yet, but I'm going to do that in a second. So before I'll show you guys an example of knowledge in a little bit, but before I do that, the last core factor that I believe helps defense. Let's look at defense from the opposing player's point of view. If I'm an attacker and I want to break my opponent's defense in Street Fighter, let's say my opponent is playing Guile, or my opponent is playing Seth, and he's playing a Turtle Seth, or he's playing a Honda. As my goal, as the offensive player trying to break this defense down, what is my goal? And my main goal is to confuse my opponent, is to throw something at him that he's not ready for, to confuse him, to overwhelm him, to prevent him from remaining calm, to prevent him from always... So I've talked about this anticipation, this knowledge thing. The best way to have all this anticipation and knowledge is if you are calm. You'll be thinking to yourself, okay, he's got these options against me, he's got these options. But if your opponent can throw something into the mix that you were not expecting, like let's say he has 5 options, 4 of which you are just completely prepared for, and the 5th one that you don't know about. If he never uses the 5th option, you'll block all 4 of those options and be like, this is not a problem, you cannot break my defense. As soon as he throws in that 5th option that you were not ready for, those first 4 options that you were totally ready for, you are going to get hit by those all day. And that is because that 1/5 option, when he threw that in there, just throws you for a loop, and you start to panic. And you're like, I was not expecting that. And suddenly your brain starts kicking into overdrive. I know all of you guys out there playing online have had this happen to you, where you're just playing and all of a sudden one thing catches you off guard, and then you just feel your whole game crumble. And so the last factor that I think is super important about defense is remaining calm. It's just about not panicking. And this is one of those ones that's just impossible to teach yourself. This is one of the only ones that you can learn through experience, which is why whenever a lot of people ask me this question, like, oh, I'm going to my first tournament this weekend, but I know I'm not very good. Should I enter this tournament? The answer is absolutely yes. And why? It's because you're going to get hit by a lot of things. You're going to get caught by all the mix-ups. You're going to have some bad games, but you know what? As long as while you're playing that, you notice all the things that are hitting you and you start processing that information in your brain, then the next time it hits you, it won't surprise you as much. And then the third time you get hit by it, because you are going to get hit by it the third time, it's going to surprise you even less, because you're going to be like, oh yeah, I remember that. And each time you get hit by it, it's going to just, the shock value is going to drain little by little by little by little until the point where you have built up that anticipation. Because now you're so like, I totally know, I totally remember this mix-up. And, it's funny because when me and David do commentary, when we watch players like Marn and stuff like that, we start picking up on the patterns of like the mix-ups that he does. And so we'll see them do stuff and, we'll call it out beforehand and such. And that's just, it's that thing. We never played against him. We aren't getting hit by it, but because we've seen it enough, we've just learned how to pick up on it and we have this anticipation for it. So, again, anticipation, remaining calm, and knowledge. Those are the three most important things about defense that will help build up. And again, defense is not about just sitting there blocking and being a turtle. Defense is about avoiding damage. I'll get into that a little bit in the third section where I talk a little bit about more advanced concepts about defense. But before I do that, what I want to do is I actually want to go into the game, show some fundamental stuff in Street Fighter in particular, because this last weekend we had an amazing Street Fighter tournament at Seasons Beatings, and Canada Cup is coming up, and that's going to be an amazing Street Fighter tournament as well with the 5-on-5 tournaments that's going on. So I want to talk a little bit about Street Fighter. One of the questions that a lot of people have asked me about is, how do you play the meaty game? How do you do reversals and, autocorrects and such like that? So when I come back, we'll get into that with some in-game Street Fighter examples. All right, see you in a bit. All right, everybody, welcome back to First Attack. We are talking about defense. So what I want to show you guys are some actual real-world examples here. And one of the things that I wanted to show you, for example, I talked about this a little bit earlier, is knowledge. Knowledge is one of the most important things in defense, is knowing how to block things, knowing what to look for and such. I had talked about defense in a little bit of a generic fashion about like, oh, you need anticipation and all this stuff. But let me show you some examples of knowledge here. And so I'm going to show you a very popular Kami trick. And yes, I'm exposing my own character here, but I'm going to show you a very popular Kami trick that a lot of Kami players like to do. So if you watch, this is going to be a very common thing here, that a Kami will hit you in a combo, and if you do not do a quick rise, they jump over you, do a dive kick, and then you block that dive kick, and now you are in a situation where you have to guess the mix-up. If I hold forward on the controller, I get hit, and so it's kind of ambiguous. They can time it so it looks like a cross-up or not a cross-up. If I do a quick rise, I'm in a bad situation as well. So if I quick rise here, I block, or if I hold forward, I get hit, right? So you see where I get hit right there. So the question really comes down to, what am I talking about with, what am I talking about with knowledge here? What I mean by knowledge is that once you start learning what to look for and how to get away from things, a lot of times you don't even need to worry about a lot of these mix-ups. So the key factor about this mix-up here from Kami is that if you do not quick rise, she has to jump over you twice. Now notice how close she is right now. I pause it here. Look how close she is above your head when she does this second dive, right? Now she's going to time it correctly so that she can hit you in the head every single time. but the close proximity of it, if I don't quick rise, I know she has to be super close to me. And you see what I just did there? I just forward dashed. Anytime Cammy hits you with this combo and jumps and dives, if she tries to jump and dive again, you can forward dash. She's not going to hit you with her cross up short. The only thing she can do is dive super early. And usually you can spot that. And if you know about that, now you can avoid this whole mix-up. I'm not going to quick rise and get beat up by this. Instead, what I'm just going to do is not doing anything, because when she lands with the dive kick, look how close she is. She has to land that close to you to be able to hit you with that cross-up dive kick. So because she's landing that close to you, you know then the second dive kick is dashable. Oops, I completely messed up the timing of this training dummy. So here we go. So I'm just going to not do anything, and if she jumps and dives again, I'm going to dash forward. I think every character can do that except for maybe some of the taller ones like Sagat, like Zangief and T-Hawk and such. But if you're Zangief and T-Hawk, Cammy's not going to be dive kicking you all over the place. If you're Sagat, then you're just going to have to deal with it. But if you're Sagat, you're tall enough that you can stand block it. Cammy has less frame advantage, so there's going to be some issues with that. But that is an example of knowledge right there. Let me show you another example of knowledge. If I am Cammy, for example, and my opponent is T-Hawk, one of the favorite tricks of T-Hawk is just to jab SPDU and then do an ambiguous cross-up. Now, what you need to learn about this situation here when he does this, if I jump right from the spot, I cannot cross you up. Watch again. I'm just going to be T-Hawk, jab SPDU, hold up forward. I'm not going to cross you up. I'm going to do it one more time. Jab SPD, wait a little bit, jump forward. I can't cross you up. So the only way T-Hawk is going to be able to cross you up is if he takes a step. Right? Okay, so my T-Hawk timing is really bad. But take a step, and now look at that. I crossed you up. That's an example of knowledge right there. So basically, if you know this, instead of looking at T-Hawk and wondering, which way do I block? Watch T-Hawk. See if he takes a step forward. As soon as you see him take a step forward like that, now you know which side it's going to be. And you're only going to know this if you know how to fight T-Hawk, if you have knowledge of what T-Hawk is capable of. So, as a Cammy player, if I see this, and then I see T-Hawk take a step and do the splash, hey, guess what? I'm going to use that same escape option. I'm going to sit here and watch and watch. As soon as I see T-Hawk take a step forward, I'm going to dash forward. I have just completely escaped the mix-up. I don't even have to block the correct direction. If I block the correct direction, I'm still stuck in block stun, and he's got all this advantage on me. But because I see him take that step forward, I've escaped that entire mix-up situation, and I'm out of there now. I do not have to deal with it at all. Once again, I'm just going to sit here and watch. See, as soon as you see T-Hawk take that step forward, I know to dash forward. And then, conversely, if I see T-Hawk grab me like this, and stand here and wait, and then jump, like that, then what I'm just going to either do, I mean, you can backdash, obviously, but this is dangerous because you probably get hit like that, or he has an option select. But if he doesn't take a step, then at least I know I can block. I'm not going to get hit by a combo. I'm not going to get put into a bad situation. Another great example of this, and there are a lot of situations where you get put into 50-50s and it really kind of sucks. One of the most common examples is the Blanca the Ultra 1 wake-up mix-up that you have to deal with, which is just a pain. So let's pick the best color Vega here, which is blue. And then I'm going to pick Blanca here. Alright, lightning cannonball here.
Training stage. The stage of battle is
So the very common mix-up that you have with Blanca
Are you ready? Fight!
is, whoops, I need to control him, so let's record, is he walks up, fights you, sits here for a little bit, and then you have to guess what side you have to block this on, right? So you have to know that Blanca needs to take a step forward to be able to execute this. He has to take a step kind of forward like this. Now, the best advice I ever heard about learning how to block this properly is to do exactly what I'm doing in training mode right now. Use Blanca, throw your own character, and then try to do the trick. Try to get it to cross up, try to make it as ambiguous as possible. And once you record a situation where it is ambiguous, alright, let's try one more time. Once you record a situation where it is ambiguous, let's see if I can do it. Oops. Well, that is not ambiguous at all. Hang on, let's start that over again. Alright, that's a little ambiguous right there. Oh, that was perfectly ambiguous. Okay, so now let's play back. Let's play this back. I'm going to let myself get thrown. I'm a Vega player, and I want to know how to learn how to block this, right? So I'm going to see this. I'm going to block back. What's going to happen here? Okay, I got hit. Now I have a recorded situation where Blanca is always going to cross me up. Now the key to this, what the advice that someone told me now, is with your character, look at where Blanca's hands are. Learn to remember where Blanca's hands are in relation to Vega's feet. If you can remember that, and this is a knowledge thing, this is going to require you to go in training mode and try this out. You have now, if you can memorize that little thing right there, that's going to help teach you how to block Blanca's mix-up. And so it is a 50-50, and it is kind of a guess, but you can minimize the guess down as much as possible so you do not have to deal with this situation. And that is a huge thing. That's another example of using knowledge to your advantage on how to escape situations, which is why a lot of times it's important to use the characters, even if it is just in training mode. Set up something that beats you up all the time and then actually try to fight it and see if you can learn how to deal with it. Okay, so that's some examples of knowledge. What I want to go over now a little bit, a lot of people have talked to me about autocorrects. They want to learn how to do autocorrects in this game because a lot of people have trouble with it. To be honest with you, this is a hard topic to cover because there's autocorrects in Street Fighter 4 and then there's autocorrects in other games, and it's very, very different depending on which game you're playing. Street Fighter 4 has much easier autocorrects to deal with than most of the other fighting games because one, the game is very lenient, and two, the codes are very easy to input. There's a lot of easy inputs here. So let's use M. Bison here. Let's set up a situation where I'm going to do a cross up here. Oops. Sorry. Alright. I'm trying to time this wrong here. Alright, so there we go. We have that situation here. Let's see if I might have... Now, I want to make something clear, is that some cross-up timing can be done in such a way that autocorrects can't save you. And that particular throw setup that I just did there looked particularly good at that. Oh, no, never mind. Autocorrects still work. Hallelujah, Street Fighter 4. Alright, here we go. So, how do you do an autocorrect? In Street Fighter 4, there's many different ways to do an autocorrect. So, let's do one here. Okay, so that's one method, and I'll explain them in just a little bit. I'm going to do another method, which is the cheesy Street Fighter. Oh, wow, never mind. I didn't even autocorrect that. But let's do this one more time. What? Come on, Bison, throw me. Alright, there you go. So that's the other way to do it. So, the question a lot of people ask, how do you do an autocorrect correctly? I would say there's probably about 3 different techniques to do it. And these vary in difficulty. My favorite one is the delayed button method, where what I'm going to do here is there's a window after you enter the code. So I'm going to do forward, down, down, forward. See, take a look at my joystick inputs over there. Forward, down, down, forward. After you input the code for the uppercut, can you hear how delayed that is that I'm hitting the button? Listen to this for a little bit. Did you hear that? Like, well, that was too slow. I can put a significant space in between the end of the joystick and the button press. So one of the things that you want to do with an autocorrect is make sure your character turns around. If you do not make sure your character turns around in time, what's going to happen is you're going to uppercut the wrong direction. Watch. Let's see if I do this. If I try to do a reversal uppercut here, right, I come out, obviously I'm hitting Bison, that's not the important thing. The most important thing is that Ryu is uppercutting in the original direction. If the Bison had distanced it properly, I would miss, he would punish me, and I would be dead. So, the whole goal here is to make sure that you uppercut the correct direction. So the secret of that is, before Bison crosses your plane, before he passes over your head, input the code facing this way, wait to see Bison pass over your head, and then hit the button. Because you have that long old window that gives you that opportunity, it's very easy to take advantage of that in this game. Not a lot of games give you this kind of a window. A lot of other games have much smaller windows, such as Super Turbo. But you can still do it in those games with the exact same technique. You just have to be a little bit more tight with your execution. Another way to do it is the infamous John Choi crosscut, which is actually more useful in games like CVS2 and Third Strike because the window is so much shorter. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it in this one, but let's see if I can do this. I can't do the John Choi crosscut. Which, by the way, I really hate the name of, but that's a whole nother story. Alright, so the way crosscut works is that basically if you hit forward, down, and down forward, instead of hitting forward, down, and down forward, what you end up doing is hitting forward, down, and down back. And what you're doing is that moment that Bison crosses the plane, when he passes over your head, that's when you hit down, and then after he passes you, you hit down forward. Well, you hit down back in the original way you were facing, but now it turns into a down forward. So what you're actually doing is an uppercut code. So the way that John Choi would actually do it is he would just kind of do a half circle, but instead of going all the way to straight, he would stop it diagonally down. And that enters an uppercut code as long as Bison is passing over your head when you hit down. So, let's try this again. You know, I made the cross-up timing a little too tight. Let me record this a little bit, and let me make Bison jump a little further over his head. Yeah, I think I can get it there. So let's do a playback really quick. There it is, right there. So there's the crosscut there. So if they time the meaty on the jump attack very, very tight, so that they land right on your head, this technique is very hard to use. But if they're trying to do it so that they bait your uppercut so that it misses, which I guess Bison's just, I'm having trouble getting this set up here. Okay, see, there you go. That's the situation right there. If I jab uppercut, he hits me, right? So if you know he's going for that kind of a situation, then you can use the John Choi crosscut here, like that. Perfect. Okay, so basically the further behind they are from you when they try to cross you up, the easier to use that method. The last method of autocorrect here isn't even really an autocorrect, it's an option select. And this game, this only works for Street Fighter 4. Do not try to use this trick in any other game. It is taking advantage of Street Fighter's extremely lenient inputs. And of course, everyone knows about the uppercut shortcut, which is down, forward, down, down, forward. So I don't even have to hit forward on the controller, and I can uppercut. So you can see right here, I'm never even hitting forward on the controller, even though the first part of the code is supposed to be towards, down, down, towards. Like you can see, I'm just holding down towards right here. I go to down and then down forward again. Never gonna go to forward. And here comes out the uppercut. See? So basically what this does then is that in situations where a character like Seth has the ability to mix you up. Oh crap. Cammy's one of the hard ones to do this on. And then you have that mix up on which side Seth is going to land on. He can choose either side to land on. What happens is that you can take advantage of the code shortcuts by wiggling the controller back and forth between the two different diagonals and mash on kick. And because the code is just diagonally down, down, diagonally down, you're inputting uppercut in both directions by wiggling between the two diagonals. Now it doesn't matter which side Seth ends up on, you will come out with an uppercut. Obviously, Seth can block it, punish you, he can EX uppercut, beat you, or, you know, he's got a myriad of ways to punish it. But if you're pretty confident your opponent's going to do something, you can stop these kind of left-right mix-ups. Another good one is Cammy mix-up, for example. Ow. Okay, so for example, Cammy has, you know, let me see if I can do this right. Ooh. That trick right there, right? So she can hit you, EX Tiger Knee dive kick you, and pop you into the air by doing it late and dash under you. Now if I'm Seth, I can do the same thing, wiggle back and forth and back and forth. So no matter what side she ends up on, if she ends up on the front like that, I'm going to come out with the uppercut. Doesn't even matter which side she's going to end up on. So that's kind of another way to use autocorrects. That one isn't even like, you don't, it's an option select. Requires no guesses. It's just you're going to take them out either side, whichever one they do. Yes, they can block it and punish you, but that is a way to get out of that situation. Again, Street Fighter 4 exclusive, not going to work in any of the other games. So don't try it in like in Cross Tekken or Marvel or anything like that, because you will get killed, because that code shortcut does not work in those games. Alright, so when I come back, I want to talk about a little bit more advanced concepts of defense, taking it to kind of the next level. So, yep, stick around, guys. Alright, welcome back, guys, to First Attack. I am James Chen. We are talking a little bit about defense here. And so, oops, let me turn that down. One of the things I want to get into is a little bit more advanced techniques of defense. There's two main things that I've been covering so far, and most of it is applied to Street Fighter 4. Now, the thing that makes it so hard is that a lot of games that you play are going to be very different than Street Fighter 4. In fact, Street Fighter 4, I would probably say, is the most defensive fighting game that we're playing out right now. And I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, I think that's true. So in Street Fighter 4, blocking is going to get you the farthest. Blocking is going to be the most effective weapon. But one of the, and a lot of these things I had talked about was, you know, anticipation, so knowing how to block and such like that. But you'll notice that, you know, some of the examples that I did give were like dashing away from situations and such. In some games, blocking is actually one of the worst things that you can do. Marvel, for example, I talked about this a little bit earlier, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have been watching First Attack for a while, have heard me say this a million times. Once you start blocking in Marvel, you're pretty much screwed. You gotta guess to escape that situation. You've got to have immaculate push block timing. And you got to figure out a way to get out of that situation. If your opponent has any idea what he's doing, once you get blocked, you're done, right? So the whole trick is, in Marvel, defense has nothing to do with blocking. Defense is about avoiding. It's about movement. It's about you taking advantage of the entire playing field that you have. So rather than trying to defend stuff, and you'll see a lot of Street Fighter players do this when they play Marvel. This is what I do all the time. I start blocking stuff, and I'm just like, all right, I'm going to block this, and I'm going to X-Factor cancel and kill him, or I'm going to block this, and I have this crazy plan ready to go. And then they just do some crazy mix-up I've never seen before, and I die. So blocking is not a good idea. Tekken is the same thing. We talked about this with Rip last week. We talked about philosophy of Tekken and how, blocking is not necessarily a great thing, because really the high-low mix-up game in Tekken is fairly human unreactable. So you should not be counting on blocking everything and defending everything to win in a game like Tekken. You have to count on backdashing, sidestepping, just having immaculate movement, avoiding moves so that you can whiff punish them and such. So, when you think defense, don't always think about blocking, especially if you're not playing Street Fighter. If you're playing another game, if you're playing Tekken, if you're playing Marvel, if you're playing Persona, if you're playing Guilty Gear that's coming out, I'm going to tell you right now, if you think blocking is a good idea in Guilty Gear, just wait till you fight a Slayer player or an Eddie player. Eddie's like the best example. As soon as you start blocking, you're dead. I mean, he's got so many different ways to mix you up, it's not even funny. So try to avoid blocking as much as possible in a lot of those games. You start learning to utilize defense in a lot of different ways. So defense can come in the form of many things. Just keep that in mind. And especially in something like Marvel, defense, is particularly effective if you chicken block. If you hold up back and block a lot more. Yeah, you can get caught in the legs before you jump into the air, but for the most part, holding up back is much safer than holding down back, which is safer in Street Fighter. So, there's a lot of different things that you got to learn between the different games. Another thing I want to talk about, I mentioned a little bit earlier in the stream that defense is about taking as little damage as possible. A lot of people probably will think of defense as avoiding damage altogether. And that's not going to be the situation. Sometimes what you have to do is accept the fact that you're going to get hit and that you're going to take damage. But what you want to do is maximize, or I should say minimize, the amount of damage the opponent can get potentially off of you. One of the best examples of this is with El Fuerte. Hang on, let me go back to this over here. Guys, this is why I need a stream producer. Let's go back to the game. Okay, here we go. One of the best examples of this is with El Fuerte. Once El Fuerte knocks you down, it is really hard to get away from that situation, especially if you're a character that doesn't have a particularly strong wake-up game. So let's just pick Chun-Li here, because without meter, she doesn't really have a good wake-up game. So what you want to do here is, what's El Fuerte's goal? Knock you down, keep you guessing, keep you in his vortex, tortilla throw you, tostada press you and such, and just keep you in the situation where you have to keep guessing which way he's going to attack you. So if we go to El Fuerte here, once he knocks you down, he can cross you up with a tostada press. He can stay in front with a tostada press. Wow, is Chun-Li just really hard to hit with a cross up here? Oh no, there it is, right there. He can also run away from you and do the tortilla throw. If you're thinking you're all smart and you're going to block the tostada press, he can grab you with the fajita buster and all these things like this. And every single one of these knockdowns that he does to you prevents you from doing a quick rise. Except one particular situation, which is if he can tostada press you. So let's do a playback here. If he tostada presses me here, like this, I cannot get a quick rise. And you see how much frame advantage he has? He has all the time in the world to set up another one. But if you know you're going to get hit, if you're in this kind of situation, and I'm Chun-Li and I have no meter, so I can't EX spinning bird kick out of here and stuff like that. And if I notice that my opponent does the tostada press a little bit late enough, I'm just going to jump in the air and get hit on purpose. He doesn't get that same mix-up on you anymore. So in this situation, the defense that I'm employing here is not me completely bypassing damage. It's me taking the least amount of damage possible. I'm going to accept taking this damage so I can get away from taking a bunch more damage. And that is a form of defense. And I wanted to, what I was calling this in my notes here is like outcome trees. You know, it's like you start branching all the different possible outcomes that can go. And you pick the one that's you're going to take the least damage of, or you're going to be in the least, rush down situation. So, if I'm fighting against a Fuerte and I'm going to keep getting hit by like this, I'm taking the same amount of damage. See, I'm taking the same amount of damage from the Tostada press, but the situation I'm in is so much worse. So I'm just going to jump in the air, do a quick rise, get out of that situation. I took the same amount of damage, but the potential damage I'm going to take later on is far less. So that's another way of thinking of defense, of trying to escape these kind of situations. For example, Seth, if you're not in danger of Dizzy, you may just want to block because his SPD is not going to do as much damage as a really crazy combo that he has where he's going to uppercut, FADC, stomp, 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 dive. And now, you want to kind of gather it. So, again, pertinent to Seasons Beatings this past weekend, Cammy versus Akuma. Like, if you watch that matchup between K-Brad and Infiltration, what you'll actually notice is that K-Brad, every time he got knocked down into a situation where Infiltration could start the Vortex, K-Brad actually got pretty beat up by the Vortex. And all the rounds that he won, he just did not get put into that situation. So he's more willing to take risks in situations where, for example, he jumps and gets hit out of the air by an air fireball and then he's going to land in quick rise or whatever. It's fine. But, there are situations where he's going to walk up and if Akuma can sweep him, then all of a sudden he's got the Vortex going. If he plays too defensive and Akuma actually gets to throw him, then he's got the Vortex going there as well. So, there's a lot of different ways that, the Vortex can be set up. If you're aware of those methods and you avoid those ones in particular and allow yourselves to get hit by the situations that don't create the Vortex, it's not going to be as bad of a situation. So that's for example, is a really high-level concept of how to take less damage. And that's really important when it comes to a lot of characters' vortexes as well. There are some vortexes that you can't do anything about. For example, Ibuki. Most of the time, there's really not much you're going to do about it. Like, some characters may be willing to, try to do a move that takes them across the screen so that, the most you're going to get hit by is a sweep or something like that. In Ibuki's case, it's not really going to work because she can chase you down with her slide and put you back in the vortex situation. But against some other characters with particular vortexes, like Akuma, you may want to defend against the cross-up hurricane because that's going to cause more damage than if you get thrown by the demon flip throw. So you're going to be more cautious of one option over the other. And, it can keep you stuck in the vortex. That's the whole point of a vortex. And honestly, there's no real good ways to get out of vortexes. It's a very common question I get asked through email is, how do I escape these vortexes? They're a vortex for a reason. They're effective for a reason because they are super hard to escape. And there's really no secret except just trying to see what they do and block it on reaction. And like I said, it's hard. Or just guessing. Like if your opponent crosses you up twice, then you're thinking third time he's not going to cross me up again. So you take that option to avoid the cross-up because the opponent wants to mix you up. So there's a lot of different ways to get around the vortex. But in general, you kind of want to take the least damage route possible. And the hardest part is, of course, in situations where you're getting hit by Seth's vortex, you're close to Dizzy, and an SPD might get you stunned. Yeah, then that's a problem. Now every option is just as scary, and that's why whenever you see players get so close to stun, they almost always get hit and get stunned because the panic onsets, and like I said, remaining calm is one of the key things to having a strong defense. Is there any other questions anybody has in the chat about defense? I know a lot of people are asking me about Cammy on the stream. They want to keep trolling me, saying, oh, Cammy's still low tier, right? And for the record, I never said she was low tier, just never said she was top tier. But to be honest with you, I mean, there's really not much I can argue these days. Like, the stuff that I'm watching, and when I see K-Brad play Cammy, when I see Chirithi play Cammy, when I see a lot of these guys, Xiaohai, playing Cammy, you know, I mean, I'm learning a lot of things, and I see a lot of things that are definitely missing from my personal game, and these are the holes in my game that I'm starting to figure out that hopefully I can cover. And in fact, even in the last few weeks at Wednesday Night Fights, I've been doing a little bit better with Cammy because I've been picking up a lot of these tips. Definitely think she's top 10 right now. I probably think she's top 8. She's pretty much on the door of getting top 5 in my ranks right now. The top 5 for me are kind of hard to break, so it'll be a little bit work for her to get up there, but considering how powerful her vortex is, and most of my top 5 characters are all characters that have vortexes, you know, she may get up there eventually. So it's really not much I can argue with. She's getting stronger as time passes. She keeps getting stronger. However, I still believe that she may run into a Sea Viper kind of situation where a lot of people thought that Sea Viper is really powerful, and now a lot of people don't think she's as good as she was before because she stopped winning tournaments as much. Could possibly happen. I don't know. That's my prediction, but we'll have to see as time goes on. So, name my top 5. My top 5 in no particular order are Seth, Viper, Fei Long, Ibuki, and Akuma. So all 5 of them with a vortex except for Fei Long, who I just think is a super effective character. So that's my top 5. All right, that's pretty much all I have for tonight. And stick around, guys. We will be on with Ultra David with level 3 focus. And if you think I talk about Cammy a lot, I apologize because he's going to be talking about Cammy a lot too today. So in particular about the K-Brad infiltration match. All right, stick around for that. And thanks for tuning in.